Good morning. This morning is Tuesday, June 6th, 2023. This is the Finance, Insurance, and Admin Committee. Present today are Councilman Clunt and Councilman Schramm, City Attorney Paul Jensen, and Finance Officer Chandra Phillips. We have a loaded agenda from the Finance Officer today that will include cash on hand explanation, the total investments for each of our three funds, a First Interstate Bank update, insurance hotlines, the community center, charges for cards for non-residents is a topic, finance office budget for personal services and personal services from other budgets. So Chandra's got a busy day. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions.
So I want to explain what the legal definition from the state and from the feds is of what cash on hand is, because it gets thrown around a lot. Let's use cash on hand to pay for this. In some funds that works perfectly, and other funds it does not. So cash on hand, or in other words, unappropriated cash, is money that you have in that fund that is not being budgeted to spend. So for instance, in the general fund, there was going to be approximately $1 million cash on hand if you chose not to spend any. You appropriated in the 2023 budget to spend 400 and some thousand of that cash, therefore leaving you with $550,000 worth of unappropriated cash. That's what you have to spend. I will gladly get an outline for everyone as to what is available for cash on hand. Corrections is a very good one. Corrections actually started the year with 1.9 million unappropriated $1.9 million cash. However, you as a council in your ordinance budgeted to transfer 700,000 of that, therefore making it appropriated cash. Then you also budgeted to allow them to spend 450,000 of their cash. All of that leaving them with approximately at the end of the year, based on budget, $69,000 of unappropriated cash. Now, when we talk about that, you'll hear, and I'm using corrections because they are a revenue producing fund. You will hear that, hey, we're above in our budget this year on our revenues because we have more inmates and we've been short staffed, so now we're under on our expenses. We want to use that unappropriated cash. It is not unappropriated cash until it becomes unspent into the next budget. You will remember in January of 2023, we did an we encumbered from the 2022 budget into the 2023 budget in the corrections fund. What that means is there were funds that were unspent out of the 2022 budget because of timing that needed to be spent in the 2023 budget. So you as a council, this year we did it via a ordinance. In future years, you will do it via a resolution. We do have state statute authority to do it via resolution, which takes a lot less time. But you have to do it within the first 30 days of the year. So because their IT project was not completed and it was budgeted for in 2022, you encumbered the rest of that. The roof was not completed in 2022, you encumbered that cost over because they hadn't spent it. So you are able to encumber over and adjust the budget accordingly. A comment that came up before the cameras were live was a contingency fund. The way the City of Winter has always done it in the past is you only have a contingency fund for the general fund. When you talk to Rod up at the state Department of Legislative Audit, he likes to talk as in general fund, because that's your sales tax dollars coming in.
It's the most common one.
It's the most common one. Not every city has all of these extra enterprise funds like the City of Winter. So by state statute, upon review and comment with our auditors, you actually can build in a contingency line to each fund. That does not mean specialty funds. Specialty funds have their own separate budgeting, appropriations, all of that. So the general fund, your electric fund, your water fund, your sewer fund, your corrections fund, those funds can have contingency lines built in. So you can only do 5% of that budget. So if you're gonna do it per fund, you'll have to address what your general fund contingency line is and only make it 5% of general fund. And then 5% of your total budget for electric, that's how you build those contingencies, and that's according to auditors. Which, we don't hit 5% of the general fund right now, so we're fine on that. I just
Close.
want to make that clear. You will no longer take it off of the total budget, you'll take it off of the individual fund. No one has authority to spend out of contingency except by a full council vote. So, let's say, example being that there's some equipment out there that needs to be purchased by a fund, and you don't necessarily know if you're gonna be able to get it. I'm gonna use the electric department for an example. They know that they need a bucket truck. We don't know that we're gonna be able to get it next year. You could put that money into the quote-unquote contingency line versus the equipment line. And then if we are able to get it next year, by one council motion in a meeting, you can transfer from contingency over to the equipment line. Otherwise, it stays in contingency and then goes back into cash the next year as unappropriated.
But that contingency can only be 5% of that enterprise's total budget.
You are correct. So some of them could be really big, some of them could be really small. Your water sewer funds don't have a ton of expenses except during highway project years. Then they do get pretty big, but on a typical year, like this coming year, with the highway project done, you're gonna see your water sewer department's expenses go down quite a bit based on that. I mean, we had a lot of grant money that came in for that, so we were able to utilize that. Any questions on the cash on hand or contingency?
Going to another example with the electrical department. You have to go to bid on those bucket trucks
Or a bid agency?
or a bid agency. But you can, I'm going to use the encumbering also.
Yeah.
You could put it into the budget. If it doesn't come available, which normally delivery is now 18 months to 24 months out, at the end of the year, instead of it going to unappropriated cash, you can encumber it, pull it forward into the new budget, and doesn't affect what you've budgeted in the following summer. And you could do it for 2-3 years. Case in point, what happened this was happening before, when the American Legion building was bought and moved as a halfway house. They encumbered $300,000 one year, pulled it forward, put $300,000 in the next budget, encumbered $600,000 forward, put another $300,000 in the budget, and that's how it was encumbered to have $900,000 for that project back in 18. So, interesting process. Didn't understand it then, clearly understand it now.
So with that being said, I've spent a lot of time researching how to better prepare the city for things that happen. We currently have $1 million reserve. It's over $1 million now because it's in a interest-bearing account, a money market account.
Electrical.
Yep, it is an electrical. When council made that motion to put $1 million capped into that fund, it was a simple motion. What it should have been was an actual resolution with an explanation of what that money can be used for. You currently have no true explanation as to what it can be used for. It was just put $1 million at $10,000 a month until it's capped at $1 million into a reserve in the electric fund. So you technically use that for anything. I do believe in the comments and explanations that happened, just not placed into the minutes or via resolution. It was intended for emergency purposes. Perfectly fine. That's great, and I don't think that this current council has any
Designs?
desire to spend except in an emergency purpose. But it is there in case of that. You guys have heard Kurt talk about the fact if we need to replace our transmission station, $1 million might put a little dent in it. I mean, it could be potentially $3 million to replace that transmission station. So what the recommendation is, I think you all have owned businesses before, have worked in the financial side of businesses. You always hear when you have a business, you should have 6 months worth of expenses put aside, don't touch it, so that if something happens, no revenues come in, you've got to fall back. And you have some time to get your feet underneath of you again. What the recommendation is for cities is to put 3 months worth of expenses away. And again, this is only for enterprises and general. This does not include specialty funds. Your specialty funds would be the airport, 24/7, 911. Those are specialty funds. These would, and I have them before you, the general fund, electric, water, sewer, corrections. I do not have sanitation on there.
You do
I'm
not.
sorry, I need to put sanitation on there. Those are your enterprise funds that you could put money aside for. And then you don't have this, well, we have $1 million, can't I have that to spend it? You can come in and say, no, that $1 million is in a reserve for emergency purposes. You actually only have $500,000 to spend. So 3 months worth of expenses in the general fund is $1,134. That would pretty much tap out your cash on hand at this point in time. You do not need to, and I wouldn't recommend doing that either, put it all in at once. You could start, as you did with the electric fund, put so much away per month, per year, however you want to do that, and start setting that aside, knowing that we're building that reserve up for the general fund. You don't necessarily have to say it's just for the general fund either. You could put so much away as a reserve that would cover all of those and use it from all departments, and then that's cash that the city has in a reserve for those emergency purposes. Electric, 3 months worth of expenses, $723,000. That would still leave you $603,000 in cash. Water, $175,000. So this one is a little bit tough because we've had some pretty major projects over the last few years. Kind of went off of previous years, but I also know that could change based on the fact that we are doing more in water with our main lines and our sewer with our sewer relining, so it could potentially be more than that 175, but just something to look at. Water, that would leave approximately $1 million in cash. Sewer, if you did the same, it would leave 186. We know that we're working on building sewer back up. Sewer got depleted a few years ago due to the lagoon lift station, and then again this highway project. Sewer doesn't make as much money as water, and so we know that that kind of got depleted, and we've been working on building that up. In fact, 4 years ago you had to transfer money in just to make your budget work. So at least we've got some money in there, so we are doing better. Corrections, 3 months worth of expenses is $1,125,000. Your budget in 2023 shows that they're spending all but $69,000. That is the budget that you as council approved. Now, we know and understand that if they meet or exceed what they budget for revenues and they go under in expenses, there'll be more than that, but I have to go off of the budget numbers to give you guys those. Hopefully there is more. So if we were to create these reserves, I'd like to start working on it into the 2024 budget. Not saying it needs to happen right now, but really get to thinking about it, throw it into the budget, and have you pass a resolution that states exactly what it can be used for. Emergency infrastructure purposes, or is there an emergency damages due to storms, different things like that. Mr. Jensen, who is a very smart attorney, can word that however you guys would like. So right now,
What's the advantage of taking money out of a reserve account that we already have and splitting it 6 ways and making 6 reserves?
you wouldn't have to make 6 reserves. You could have it 1 reserve.
We already have for 1 reserve.
You have $1 million in reserve, or a little over in reserve, yes.
I think, are you asking, we have unappropriated cash in each one of these enterprises plus the general fund
Yeah.
that by resolution or ordinance, council can choose. I'm struggling with this one also, tying it up, those funds. I think the council should have the flexibility to work with those appointeds. Unappropriated cash, I mean, I was doing the numbers here, and that's tying up.
But we don't know what that is till after December 31st.
Right, each year,
When the year is over.
Right.
That month of December, you can figure out, okay, we're gonna have $80,000 left over. Is there something we want to do right now? And that comes to council and we decide.
so
But
like.
that's gonna be a knee-jerk reaction rather than planned ahead. I like the idea, and all it is bookkeeping, but I like the idea of having that in each department that can then in the next year be included in the budgeting process to spend if we didn't spend it in the previous year.
The flexibility for
So,
council.
There's 2 reasons behind why I've started looking into this. Number 1, if you remember approximately 10-ish years ago, we laid off 10 employees because council was spending every penny that we had and we were gonna go broke and the world was coming to an end, the sky was falling. Because they didn't understand what cash on hand meant, and ultimately our budgets were just our budgets were saying that there was cash on hand available of $500 and some thousand every year when there wasn't. So our budgets were being done not correctly. And then also it was something comes up, well, we've got cash, we can do that,
Right.
no big deal. So this separates that so that you're not just, we've got cash, no big deal. This puts it aside, so this is number 2, puts it aside so that it's not just a quick, easy grab. You have to really think about, are we willing to take it out of this higher interest-bearing account to spend it on something?
But if you define it by resolution that it can only be used for certain things, you've taken $4 million of taxpayer money and tied it up into an account that's for a tornado that might hit or might not hit.
Yeah,
You've taken away all the flexibility of council to utilize taxpayer funds in the best interest of the city of Winter.
But if it's a resolution, Jody, isn't that also make a motion to change that resolution?
absolutely.
So what's the difference?
That's to you. So you're not really tying it up. All
So,
you're doing
It's tied
is,
up until and unless you change it.
yep, so all you're doing, if you put it in a resolution and say this is for emergency use only, all it does is stop the public works director from spending it.
Public Works Director can't spend unappropriated cash
That's
without.
my point.
They can't now.
But because we put it in a budget, because we put it in an appropriated fund, now the public works director can spend it without council authority.
Understand that.
Okay.
But that's during the budget process. So at the end of this year, once we transferred in, we had 1.8 million in unappropriated cash in a general fund. That's the number that sticks out in my head. That wasn't appropriated. You didn't put it into a budget, but it's there. I'm gonna go to the electrical reserve here, Chandra. It's in a reserve now. It's not specified what it's gonna be used for. By resolution, you spell out, it can only be used in a natural disaster crisis. Well, there may be other crises, and all you've done is added a step to get those funds by changing the resolution,
Yep.
getting them. You've handcuffed yourself, and I'm okay if you guys want to handcuff yourself with an extra step. But to tie up $4 million of taxpayer funds that can be used by resolution for these, when there have been other instances that have come up in recent years, we can use the halfway house where we were spending out of unappropriated cash to do that. You as a council, I think, need the flexibility it's still a motion to spend from unappropriated cash. The only time they can spend it is when you've budgeted into their budget out of unappropriated cash. If you don't, it's still there and it takes an act of city council. And
So
you're,
what are we doing if we have $4 million in unappropriated funds? Because we were convinced that we should make a budget that's so damn large, we're gonna have $4 million left over. That, to me, is fiscal irresponsibility.
agree 100%.
So we need to quit saying yes to every budget item as we were convinced that, go ahead and say yes to the budget because they still got to get approval to spend it. Now I'm told that the laws are changed, they don't have to get approval to spend it. So,
If you appropriate it,
so I
they can
can't
spend
see,
it.
I want to be convinced that we're not going to have $4 million that we budget for and do not spend
So here, I'll give
for any
you,
reason.
I'll give you an example of what has happened here in the last 3 years. We've sat here and listened to CJ talk to us in the electrical department, and electrical committee. He needs transformers. He puts those into his budget. You as a council know we need the transformers, but the supply chain has broke down where he can place the order, it's in the budget. If they come through, the money's there for him to spend. If it doesn't come through, that unspent money at the end of the year goes to unappropriated cash, where now you either need to encumber it and pull it across into the next budget, or leave it in unappropriated cash, where you guys can choose to put it into the budget or leave it in unappropriated. But if you tie it up into a reserve by resolution, now that can only be used for an emergency situation, and I understand the thought process here, but then it's lost into that reserve, and you guys have lost the flexibility for when CJ does get transformers, he can buy those, and the city of Winter needs those.
But by resolution, isn't that an immediate result? That's not a 20-day
No.
waiting
No,
period?
it's
It is a
20
20-day
days.
public.
Oh, is it 20 as well?
It is.
Okay.
Also, let
The
me
big-
explain.
Next meeting.
Time-wise, the big difference is that it's a one vote
Instead of
deal.
2 votes, it's 1 vote?
Instead of 2, correct.
Okay, so you still have to wait 20 days for that to become
20 days
effective?
after publication before it's effective.
So
Okay.
I also want to explain, if you were to set this money aside, you do not have to set it aside for emergency purposes. You can just set it aside to put it into an interest-bearing account. It doesn't have to be for emergency purposes.
We don't have to declare why
No,
we're setting it aside.
you do not.
A year ago, we said with the electrical rate increases, the water rate increases, that once we saw our revenues, we would establish reserves that would start building to replace the water line, the water main from the wells to Winter. We also talked about the main transformer out at the substation. We know that that's a $5 million bill. We said we would start setting, I'm okay if you're setting stuff aside for specific projects like that, so much for the water line coming into town out of water and sewer, the electrical transformer out at the substation. That's proper planning.
So rather than those being reserves, you would call those outlays. By state statute,
I'd rather
for
do an outlay.
outlay has to be, you can put it away for 5 years. You can put away so much money per month, per year, however you want to call it, for 5 years. And then at the end of that 5 years, you either have to redo the resolution, which is exactly what we did for the highway project. It didn't get done in 2018 like it was supposed to. Here we are, 2023. Hopefully it gets done this year. But you can put it into an outlay for 5 years at a time, and then you can be working on that. Again, can go into an higher interest-bearing account as an outlay as well. I just want to give you guys all the options. I'm not saying that you have to do any of these, but if putting it into a higher interest-bearing account helps us from having to raise rates again higher than what they are to hopefully get a better bang for our taxpayer dollars, then, maybe that's an option. I don't know. These are options for you guys to review that you as councilmen, the city has the ability to review and look into, and I need a direction from you how you would like me to look into them. Is it outlays specifically that you're looking for into each of these? Is it reserves that you're looking for? Is it an emergency reserve? Is it just so that it's not necessarily just cash and people assume we've got $1 million cash, it's fine, we don't care. So that's what I'm looking for from you guys. I don't need an answer today. I would like to start looking to the future on this, by all means, for the 2024 budget. But I wanted to give you guys those options as to what you can do. Maybe interest is good right now. A year ago, interest was not good on any of these accounts. It's amazing to see on our reserve account, we were making maybe $1,000 a month. This last cycle, I think we made $8,000, $9,000 on our $1 million reserve in our money market.
Now I
So-
think you can get 4.5.
Some. I've got a couple examples later on of some other ones that are coming up too.
Yep.
Money markets are typically, or at least last time I reviewed it, typically a little bit lower because there's no penalties for taking it out. It's liquid. CDs, you can usually get it higher because there's a penalty if you take them out early. So that's where those are at. The next item that I have from First Interstate Bank, this is the company, the bank, the financial institution that we were looking at getting new credit cards through. Current credit cards are through Wells Fargo Bank. We were already struggling with Wells Fargo Bank when they were here, and now we don't even have a local person to contact. It's an 800 number, and it takes forever to get a hold of anyone. In order for an employee to log in and view our Wells Fargo credit cards, they have to have a Wells Fargo account themselves, and then ours somehow, because it's all through their social security numbers, it's all tied together. So they can see our city stuff and their personal stuff. I don't like that, number one. Number two, we've had a lot of theft of our card numbers with our Wells Fargo cards. Wells Fargo's been great. They've given us all of our money back. That's great. But our cards have been hacked, and we don't hardly ever use them, but they have been hacked, I believe, 8 times in the last 4 years.
Jeez.
So then we have to get new cards. I can't promise you that the hacking is going to get any better based on the companies, but we signed all the paperwork with First Interstate Bank. Council approved all the fun things, and then
Whoops.
First Interstate came back and said, we changed a rule, and you now have to have an account with us with money in it before you can have a credit card with us.
Why do we have to have a credit card? For putting gas in a car when I travel?
That's the majority of it, yes.
How come I can't have a debit card?
Because then they're
From a
spending directly
local-
out of your checking account.
Yep. Okay.
Your state statutes give you the authority with a credit card, because then technically you can fight any charges that come through. So if your debit card gets hacked and they get into your cash
Your money's gone.
available, your money's gone.
Okay, so why wouldn't, and I'm just thinking out loud here, why wouldn't we open a debit card account and we keep $1,000 in it?
There's a little more of a technical legal reason why as well, and
Okay.
that is that the line employee who's going to be carrying this debit card does not have the authority to spend money immediately. They have the authority, under certain circumstances, to get a purchase order to encumber some future money to promise to pay that.
Yep,
But they don't have the authority to make an immediate expenditure of cash.
and a purchase
And that's
order,
what a debit card does.
I
It's an
agree with
immediate
that, but a purchase order has to have a full dollar amount on it?
It does.
Okay. That'd be too difficult. It makes too much common sense. But
Yeah.
it would be too difficult to manage
Yeah.
on a government basis.
Yeah.
Because then we'd be dealing locally.
But you kind of look at it from a concept that says it's kind of like having a checkbook, except that the minute you spend that debit card, it's like the check not only got written right then, but it cleared right then,
Correct.
okay?
I
So-
understand exactly what you're saying.
So you don't have any employee within the city of Winter that has the authority to take a checkbook and walk over and turn a check into cash and spend it.
But I would think that the council could come up with idea or a good working system that we could. Because we can't get a credit card from our local people. It sounds like we can't get a credit card from out-of-town people, okay? So give the employee $100 and say, go to Pier and back, you know, and buy gas with cash, okay? To me, it would make a lot of sense just to have a debit card account that, how many people do we have going out of town that are gonna buy gas, you know, with a card?
Right
on
now
any
you
given
have-
day?
About daily with the
Yep.
person transports.
Daily, okay.
Right now, you have 3 credit cards, and that's not enough. Last night on your claims, I think.
Who's
there's
got, who do we have credit cards with?
Your public safety commissioner, your public works director, and your finance officer are
Okay.
who have authority currently.
Lori's got one.
And Lori, excuse me, so yes, you have 4. I apologize, yes.
Okay.
Lori has one too. So 4 of them, and at times that is not enough. Because last night on your claims list, there were 4 reimbursements for fuel because they were going too many different directions. If you've got 2 vehicles out to Sioux Falls for an airlift and one going to Rapid to pick up from Pennington County and one up in Court and Hughes County, there's 4 right there. Now, let's say your public works director and streets department supervisor need to go to Rapid City to pick up some equipment, and your finance officer is headed up to Pier for training, and your public safety director, wherever he,
Yep.
we don't know where he went,
Yep.
but anyways, now you're having to write reimbursements to these employees consistently. The employees can't ask, number one, if it's on their card and they're purchasing something on behalf of the city, they're gonna have to pay sales tax. We do not reimburse sales tax. Now, that's different if it's just for fuel. Totally get that, fuel, we pay the fuel, nothing asked. But if they're purchasing something on behalf of the city, such as the jail, oftentimes goes to Dollar General in Gregory to purchase supplies for the jail. We do not have a charge account at the Dollar General there. We have to take a credit card, but they will at least take the sales tax off of it. But if an employee is purchasing without a City of Winter card, they have to pay the sales tax, and we don't reimburse sales tax, so that employee just lost out on some money.
That's no good.
Correct.
And I don't know that it's good that an employee has to use up his credit card limit
Right.
for the purpose of doing business for the city.
I agree with you. I don't like that at all. I
Yeah.
would rather have extra
Yeah.
cards
I would rather
under the
figure out how to
city.
make a debit card work and have as many as we want, you know, but that'll be really complicated.
So when I initially did this review, First Fidelity Bank does not have credit cards that we could use. Bank West does. Bank West just did not have all the perks that First Interstate Bank had. So I'm willing to go back and talk to Bank West, talk to them about that. They can give us quite a few things. It just won't have all the perks like the interest back and all of that.
Well,
But if that's what we need, rather than having to put money in a bank in Chamberlain, I don't have an issue with that.
I think that $100,000 deposit is ridiculous.
That what?
A $100,000 deposit to get a credit card is ridiculous.
For a 500, so the reason it's 100,000 is we were asking for a $500,000 limit because we were gonna start paying MRES out of that so that we could get that 1% back.
Yeah, money,
Yep.
But
That
that's
cash
tw- I mean,
back
that's
would've been used.
20%. You know, you get a $10,000 credit card for a personal person, you don't give them $2,000.
All right.
You know, I mean, it's,
I agree.
in a city.
I didn't know that Bank West had a credit card availability. Go pursue that.
Yep.
One other thing that we could look at with our jail being in, our transport cars being in Sioux Falls and Rapid a lot, Pier, wherever, is, I mean, like, in the ambulance, when I drive to Sioux Falls and back, they have a Cenex fuel card. There's a Cenex almost everywhere. That might eliminate a lot of these problems in our transport cars.
Or even the
You know,
Casey's,
You might
you
have to
know.
go to West 12th Street, which is where we fuel up is, on your way out of town. But you have a just a fuel card, that's the only thing it'll buy. It, that's what we use there. I'm sure there's a Cenex in Rapid, there's probably a Cenex in here. That could eliminate the need for extra,
Sure.
One
maybe
other-
an employee, having to use his own, or
One other-
having to send a credit card.
One other purpose of the credit card is once in a while, they send over meals.
Yep.
And once in a while, they get more people coming back than they have, and they will buy them dinner on that credit card. And
Yeah,
I don't know
and
that
unless
that,
you eat at Cenex, that credit card won't be any good.
The
You
credit
can only
card-
use it for fuel,
The
period.
credit card in the ambulance is fuel only. You don't get,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't buy, it.
Yeah,
With
that's-
the program, you can't buy.
Yeah, but if we
anything.
send somebody to Rapid City, tell them we're not gonna buy, you're gonna tell me we're not gonna buy them lunch?
we have to.
We reimburse the employee for their lunches.
So they use their money, and then we reimburse them, okay? So maybe
With the
gas
prisoners,
card
we
would
have
be
to.
the way to go.
But it's the prisoners that are the issue, the clients.
You have
So
to
you go
provide
to
them.
Oh,
Pennington
we
County,
can't make
assuming
them.
you're picking up 9
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
get
yeah,
10,
yeah.
you only had 9 lunches.
We need to go to
The
Bank,
the
to
credit card
Bank
thing
West.
still needs to be resolved, but I think they should look into the fuel.
It's a good idea,
Yeah,
Austin.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Am I hearing from you guys that we're not wanting to pursue First Interstate Bank?
But we're not what?
Wanting to
I'm
pursue
not.
First,
I mean,
okay.
You can send it to full council and let them
With First
have
Interstate?
some say in it too,
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm against it.
I am too, just for the record.
We already
but-
have an account at Bank West, do we not?
No, we don't.
We do not.
No, not anymore.
We only bank at one bank?
Currently, yes.
Okay. Well, I think we should pursue that.
Okay, I will give
Credit
Linda a
card,
call.
Bank
Linda's who I've spoke to on this. so I'll
And
give her a
pursue, whether it's Cenex or Casey's, because there's a Casey's everywhere as well,
call. Sure.
seems to be, but I bet Cenex is probably
There's no Casey's
going
West.
west,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think Pier is the furthest one west.
But we have cars, they ought to be able to get there and back, you know.
We also have wind.
That's right.
Shoot. I was at a hotel in Aberdeen, believe it or not, electric charging station,
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
right there at the hotel, yeah.
Insurance hotlines. So the reason I have this on here is based off of last night's policies that you guys pushed, or not pushed through, but approved. And I wanted you to be aware that these are things that we have access to. So I have personally utilized them. Paul Jensen has even utilized them. So because we have workman's comp through SDML, we have access to an employee government hotline. So this is a group of attorneys that is hired by SDML, workman's comp, specific to employment law. These attorneys are specialists in the field in South Dakota for employment law. And we have that ability to call them at any point in time for any questions we have, whether it's on policies that we have questions on, whether it's on procedures that we should be reviewing. Let's say we have a situation with an employee going on that we need to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to protect the city of Winter. And if it's employment law practices hotline, if we utilize them and we do get sued on the back end, they will waive our $5,000 deductible if we utilize them. So we are trying to, in our offices, utilize that as much as possible. It may be that Lisa is the, what's her last name? Lisa. Uh-huh.
Oh, Lisa?
Yes, from Sioux Falls.
Yeah, she's the president of the state bar right now.
Yeah. She's the main person that calls us back on all employment law. And it may be that we say, here's the situation, here's what we're doing, and she goes, that's what I would tell you to do.
Yeah.
That one, 5 simple words waives $5,000 deductible if we get called in.
And the other thing Lisa will always do, and especially if you just remind her, would you please email me,
Yes.
whether
That
it's,
opinion, yeah.
you know, number one, if she's got any particular reference she wants you to look at, but if nothing else, she'll email you to confirm the fact that you've had the conversation.
We also have access through SDPAA to a government hotline practice. So if there are questions about a city government policy, if there are questions about the operations of the government, if there are questions like that, we have the ability to call in this government hotline. This is attorneys that, again, I don't remember the gentleman's name that we've recently talked to, because we do utilize these companies.
Rob
or
Anderson.
Rob Anderson. Fantastic attorney.
Yep.
Very laid back, but he will get up there and he will very much do whatever he can to help protect you in any of these cases. Had we had these opportunities to call these individuals before on some of these suits that you guys have seen come through, I think it would have put us in a much better situation on some of them, on how to handle them, on what to make sure we had for documentation, all of these things. So I appreciate that we have that opportunity. And I don't want to speak for you, Paul, but where some of these have got, you're an attorney of all trades, correct? Essentially.
What we call general practice.
Yes, and these attorneys in these groups are great for, because they specialize in employment law, they specialize in government practices, and so, I don't know, for me, I rely a lot on other finance officers too, because we all work together, we might all have different sized checkbooks, but we all have a lot of the same issues, so we discuss what's the way to do this, and I assume it's the same way on the attorney level too. I know you
Oh,
have
it
a
is,
lot of
it is.
attorney stuff.
We have a listserv that we will communicate with each other through this Municipal Attorneys Association and whatnot. The thing that I really like about the use of the attorneys that are arranged for by the insurance company is the fact that not only is this somebody who's really, like you say, their practice is narrow, and they focus on certain areas that they're completely adept at, whereas I've got a surface knowledge and I need to really try to get in depth. But the other thing is the waiver of the of that. You know, $5,000 deductible, that's real money. And number two, by the time you do it 2 or 3 times, you just save the city potentially $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 just by making phone calls and making advantage of the knowledge base that's being offered to us. So,
Now, they are not City of Winter attorneys. They are simply there for a hotline to call and
Yep.
ask,
Yep.
what's your opinion on how we should handle that? And then we, as in Paul,
We
does the
don't have to
work.
do any action on that, though.
No.
You're just telling us.
I'm
what to
just
do.
letting you know.
yep.
So
Let's
if,
get on to this charge for cards for non-residents.
so I'm sure you guys have heard by now, based on all the junk that was happening in the community center, I did shut it down to only those who have a card access, rather than it just being open to the public willy-nilly. When I spoke with the mayor about this at the time, because the cards are about $8 a piece, we limited it to residents and businesses in city limits who are paying those property taxes to help pay on the upkeep of this. I've had many people approach me since then from outside of city limits that would like access to the facility. They're not against paying a fee, but they would like access to the facility. Because of the way we've been doing things via the pool, via whatever, I would like council to set that rate, not myself. It's a revenue coming in, you guys have that ability to set those rates versus myself.
Do you need to set an ordinance granting the authority to set rates for non-resident rates, like we did with the pool
We did
last week?
Like we did
Resolution
with
for
the
the
pool,
pool.
we can do the ordinance for that,
And
and
then
then a
let them
resolution
set.
to establish the rates.
Yeah.
Yep.
The ordinance allowed the resolution.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right. So I think we need to establish an ordinance,
Yep.
giving the city the authority.
It's what they call enabling legislation.
Yes.
Okay, so
and
let
then-
me ask you this, can we just modify what we have for the pool and use those rates?
No,
Okay,
it's gonna be a very similar document, but yet they're 2 separate facilities
I
completely.
understand, but we can't say for the pool and the community center.
Well, if you had all the same charges, you could. But I'm perceiving a completely
Good,
different structure.
yeah, it ain't that big a deal.
No, it's not.
So my question is, what kind of rates would you guys like to see on this?
Do you have a recommendation
What
for
do you charge for the
council?
parks?
Nothing.
That's your question, always your question.
The difference between this and a park, and I will say this over and over and over.
Yep.
Because this is the complaint I was getting. I have tenants in this building who pay us to have clean bathrooms, non-graffitied bathrooms, to have access into everything at all times when they are here during their 8 to 5, sometimes after 8 to 5, and they pay us for that. And then when they go in to use the restroom and there's graffiti or fires or whatever else, that is not fair to those tenants. Now, the other thing is, I have tenants who come in and they do work after hours, and I have no limits on when they can be here. They're renting from us, doesn't matter what hours they're here. And then they come in and there's kids literally climbing all over everything, breaking into other doors, breaking down doors while they're here trying to get work done. The music is blasting.
What's the family rate at the pool?
Family rate at the pool is $200.
$200.
And do you want a separate? Do you want it so that it's free for people in the city limits and then a charge for those outside of?
Yes, I would. I don't get a say, but
But that makes good sense to me, because there ought to be a benefit to living in winter,
yes.
you know? I mean, like $5 to dump, you know?
So
Okay, so-
the card itself, and maybe this will help with the decision, the card itself logs in and I can run a report, who's in our facility every night. So you have to be 18 to sign one out, because that's a legal age that I can hold you accountable. So you have to be 18 to sign one out. If you allow someone else to use your card, that's fine, but you're still liable if something happens when your card is used. Now, understand, because this question came up too, well, what happens if two people use their cards? Do we both have to pay? No, I have cameras in the facility too. I can look to see who's doing the damage.
Isn't that the way it's set up at the pool? You buy a family card for $200?
Yeah.
Unlimited number
Yep.
of family members?
Yep. Right now, the way we've signed them out is unlimited for free for city residents.
So these people that don't live in the town that say, I'm willing to pay if I can get a card, are they gonna pay $200?
I have no idea.
You gotta remember, the card lets them in 24/7, 365.
Yep,
There's
The
no-
pool's only a few months,
Yeah.
so,
I
you know,
understand
I
that.
mean. you
But
are having
but
to-
I gotta wonder if 200 isn't about as much as people are willing to spend, I don't know. Mitchell has a rec center, what are they charging? But they've got a swimming pool in theirs.
Yeah, theirs is quite a bit different than what ours is. They've got a gym and
Yeah, they have everything.
they have a lot more than we do.
And I don't know, when Bellfish or Spearfish or somebody put theirs in, they don't have enough people using it to make it pay. Millbank is the same way.
All I'm really asking for is just a little bit of help with reimbursement of the cards, because they're not cheap.
I think you set a replacement cost on the cards.
Yep.
If they're $8 and they lose their card, it's a $10 replacement fee. As far as out of town, this was always meant to be a benefit to the taxpayers of Winter, as you said, a benefit
Yep.
to those people that live in Winter, the advantage. I do think we open it up to our neighbors in the country, in Tripp County, and that could be $120, $10 a month for them, but at least establishes there is a difference between living in Winter and living outside of Winter,
Yep.
and then a replacement cost on the cards if they're gone. I think you definitely want that.
Yes, I definitely want a replacement cost on there too.
I don't think it has to be 200. We're not looking to make money off it, just,
Sounds to me like we need to make enough money to fix everything they break.
well, I asked our new custodian this week, since June 1st, on the way in this morning, I said, is it different? And she goes, there's a lot less to fix, clean up, the gym is
Because of
staying.
the issuing of the cards,
Correct,
not just anybody can come in.
correct. It's made a huge difference.
That'd be a good
Huge.
idea then, yep. But the city residents, they're free, all they gotta do is come ask for one?
Yes.
So you're wanting to know with outside the city, yep.
We have a lot of individuals who utilize it for walking during the day. And a lot of them are here because they're working in town. And so it's on their lunch break or their
Sure.
whatever break that they come in and walk.
Can't they also go and walk at the armory though?
I have no idea. Not
Don't
my
I remember
facility.
that
It's a-
people do that a lot?
It's a public facility that's locked down now.
I was gonna
Oh,
say,
they're locked up,
I
okay.
think they are.
Okay.
They used to be.
I know, cause yeah, you used to go there, you'd see people walking all the
I
time.
think the
They're
last
not.
3 or 4 years, at least,
Okay.
they've been pretty much.
That's
locked.
not, has not been available.
No.
Well, I don't have any problem with $10 a month or,
It could be 60. I mean, it could be $5 a month, whatever you guys said. But I do think the replacement card cost needs to be established in whatever we do. We need a resolution, the ordinance, the resolution.
what do you think?
Cheap, like $5 a month is fine.
Yeah, thing ain't worth having if they're gonna beat it up.
Right.
I kind of look at it the reverse way, you know, we always say Tripp County includes winter, and winter, I feel, includes Tripp County too, you know. Anybody can still get in there if I have a card, I can give it to my kid that's not 18, let him come use the gym.
As long as he's above 14. If we find anyone in there under 14, we do kick them out now.
Yeah.
Because honestly, that's where our issues were. Under 14 with
That's
no
where
one.
what, please?
All of our issues were, not all of,
Issues.
the majority of our issues were children unsupervised by adults.
Unsupervised children, yeah.
Yep. I came in one day on a Monday, and the night before on a Sunday, there were 3 young middle school aged kids sitting in the hallway, eating seeds, throwing their seed shells on the floor. I had a whole pile of seed shells on the floor, because there was no adult supervising them, telling them, throw your seeds away. The next day, I came in, and there were 10 pieces of chewed up gum sitting 5 inches away from the trash can.
Yeah.
It was stupid things of unsupervised children. So this way, we now have it if they're 14, because legally, at 14, you can drive on your own. So I would say if the state says you're able to be on your own at 14 to drive, you should be mature enough to come into the facility and know how to throw your gum away.
So what are we gaining to charge somebody from out of town? I mean, what are we,
I like your goodwill idea. Charge them $10 for a card and let it go at that.
I'm fine with that.
We get our $8 back, you know, and when the cards go over $8, then we'll charge the non-residents accordingly.
Are those cards something that you can program so that they will expire and have to be renewed
Every year. Yep. So right now, it is set on an annual renewal.
Okay.
And $10 a year is, that way we're getting it's not costing us anything to let our neighbors from Tripp County in there.
All right.
Because as I think about it, if we charge $100 a year or $200 a year, well, shit, you know. Yeah, I like the idea of just getting the card fee back.
I mean, when we acquired the gym, I mean, we knew there was gonna be zero revenue. I mean, that was our whole mentality.
It's a park.
It's,
You said jail.
oh, that,
I was like, "Oh,
I've
what?
been- yeah, you know, but, I mean, that's, we all went into that knowing that it's gonna be all money into it, no money back,
Part of that quality of life.
you know?
Yep.
This is, my concern behind having the cards is more from a monitoring standpoint. This is cheaper than paying someone to come in and monitor. I can see who's in and out. If it's being abused, I can shut that card off from my phone, from the computer, and then that person no longer has access to our facility for abusing the rules. And it's more of a monitoring purpose for me than a revenue producing by any means. I
And that
agree with
card
you,
will only
Austin.
work on one entrance door?
Correct, it will only work on door F, which
Yep.
is our handicap entrance.
Yep, very good. Get just a little more than what the card replacement cost is and let it go with that.
I am looking in to see if maybe I shouldn't say this.
You're looking into what, please?
I'm looking into see if I can find them somewhere else cheaper, but right now, the cost is $8 a piece, or right at $8 a piece, so.
So I heard $10 for non-city residents, city residents can get it for free.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm good for that. Yep.
Got you something for next week,
Well, if
Paul.
we're.
And a
hold on,
replacement cost, go ahead.
I guess I was thinking the card fee was what we were gonna just charge for all across the board. right?
Oh, not just for out of town?
I was thinking we were gonna provide the cards.
I think what we were talking, the expense of the card is why we wanna put a fee on there.
Right,
To non-residents. The whole issue here
That
is,
same card costs $8 for a resident.
agree, but those of us that live in winter and pay taxes to live in winter, we ought to get something for it.
Okay.
Like parks,
So a
you know.
$10 card fee for out-of-town residents, or out-of-town people, is
Yep.
that what?
yeah. Buy a card for $10. If you live in winter, you don't have to buy a card.
But if you.
Which
and
is
then
different in the pool.
January 1, you bring the card in to get it renewed, you don't pay another $10. You show that you didn't lose your card. I gave you $10 for the card fee, I did not lose it.
So it's a $10 lifetime fee is what you're saying?
If you don't lose your card, I mean, we're saying it's the cost of the card is why.
Is the
we
card
want
gonna
to-
wear out?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I
I mean,
agree.
that's what I'm getting here, is we need to recoup the cost of.
The way some
cards.
people take care of their cards, yeah, they'll wear out.
Yep.
So put it,
There's a lot of us.
But if they put it in their pocket with their keys, it could become unprogrammed,
they
right?
tell me it can't become unprogrammed.
Very
My
good.
card,
I'm thinking of a hotel room key.
yep, so, because it used to be if you put your hotel room key next to your phone, it would wipe it.
Yep,
They tell me that's not possible. Mine has been in my phone case for 6 months,
Yep.
not a
Mine
single
too.
issue.
Yeah.
okay, very good.
So I don't think that'll be an issue.
Yep.
It'll be more of breaking it, different things like that.
Every card we issue,
Losing
we
it.
charge $10 to non-residents.
Okay? And then a replacement cost, even for those who do live in town, if they lose it, anyone loses their card, the $10 as well.
Yep,
Okay?
because we don't have to pay lifeguards to be here, which is why we gotta charge $200 at the pool, or whatever we're charging. Okay,
So
it's 9
our
o'clock.
hour is up.
Yeah. This meeting is 1 hour. We are going to conclude before you got to your budget numbers in budget season.
we only have 3 more months to get a budget done, so probably should start looking at one. Or several.
Several.